Welcome to Share Talk, the only podcast where investors come first.
Hello and welcome to Share Talk. I am Bonnie Hughes. Today we are interviewing Critical Metals. It is an investment vehicle where management will use their experience and knowledge to acquire brownfield mining projects in the strategic metals sector. And here to tell us all about the company is Russell Fryer, Director. Hello, Russell, and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Bonnie. Thanks for having me.
So you put out some very important news today that you have filed a prospectus to list on the standard list. Do you want to give us some details about that?
Sure. It's been a long, almost 2-year journey, this Critical Metals IPO that will happen next week. The FCA came out this morning and approved the prospectus, so we'll be able to make some announcements today and also early next week on the first day of trading. And the journey actually started in late 2018 when I was in New York City and attending a small lunch with a 4-star general who had just returned from Iraq and Afghanistan. And he'd said to us at the lunch, never in the history of the world has a number 2 economic power not gone to war with the number 1 economic power. And when I sat back and thought about that, I thought, well, maybe that's boots on the ground or tanks. But what we actually see is it's number 2 economic power, China, actually cutting off supply lines and supply sources of critical metals, critical materials into the UK, into Europe, into the US. And that would hurt them economically because they wouldn't be able to participate in telecommunications expansion, satellites, just basic economic growth. And we're actually seeing that today in the news, where we see that the Europeans and the UK and the North Americans are all now relooking at their supply sources of critical metals from China and trying to source their own mines and their own supply avenues. So it's been a long haul. We had Brexit to deal with. We had the UK elections in December to deal with. And then, of course, COVID had put everything on hold for 6 months. But we finally ended up getting here to the IPO date, which is next week.
And so this is what gave you the idea to form the company and put the team together. Do you want to give us some idea about the experience and knowledge of the team and how you put them together in the company?
Sure. So we actually were looking for an experienced CFO and administration group. So we actually hired the Arana group to handle a lot of the UK listing financial aspects of the company. And then I'd worked at Robert Fleming many years ago, and I'd contacted Lloyd Pengelly, who was the head of metals and mining at JP Morgan many years ago, and brought him on board as an advisor to the board and to myself, because he has immense experience as a mining engineer in Africa. And then we have, as a non-executive director on a mission, Marcus Edwards Jones, who is the chairman of Phoenix Copper, which is an AIM-listed mining company. He's fantastic. And then we have another advisor, a technical advisor, who actually is a mining person named Steve Venn, who's based in Southern Africa. And he's mined in about 4 or 5 different African countries. So we've got a great team. We have some potential additions to the team that we can announce over the next month or 2. And we look forward to starting talks on M&A after our first day of trade.
So you raised some cash in order to do the standard list. And how are you planning to deploy that capital?
So our real 3 main core avenues of investigation for M&A is copper, cobalt, and vanadium and antimony. And antimony normally is polymetallic material, so it comes with gold. So we've allocated a portion of what we've raised for analysis and due diligence on those particular sectors. We, as a cash shell or a SPAC, will have to announce an RTO and suspend, but we're going to ensure that it's suspended for the least amount of time. And the idea is maybe to do 2 transactions at once under 1 RTO. Therefore, it'll increase the balance sheet on a much quicker basis. And then once we get cash flow, because our mantra is that you have to have cash flow within 12 months of an acquisition, otherwise we will decline it. So we should hope to have cash flow within 12 months of our first day of trade.
And so that is your strategy, is near-term cash flow generation from projects over exploration upside. And obviously acquiring these more advanced projects requires more capital. So how do you plan to fund your future acquisitions?
Well, part of the capital that we raised at 5 pence, that unit actually came with a 10 pence warrant, which is good for 2 years. So we know that assuming we deliver on our goals and our targets, we should see an appreciation of the share price, and hopefully the warrant holders will exercise their warrant certificates over the next 2 years. So that would bring us in at least another almost £2 million for M&A. Then what could happen is on some of the cash flows, we might be able to debt finance some of that, and we would look at that. And so we wouldn't have to dilute shareholders, because we want to keep the share count very tight. There's only 30 million shares outstanding. A lot of the small cap and micro cap mining stocks will have up to 1 billion or more shares, and we don't subscribe to that thesis. We want to keep the share count very low. We want to keep it in tight hands, and then using some of the cash flow and the discounted cash flows, look to potentially debt finance some of the M&A transactions.
And so you've been looking at and evaluating opportunities. How long have you been evaluating them for? And whereabouts are they? And are you anywhere close to making some acquisitions?
Well, so my background is engineering, and I've been in the metals and mining space for over 25 years. So I have a Rolodex of mines either on care and maintenance or are producing but are small, that we can look at after the first day of trade. We have not entered any talks, formalized talks right now, because we'd have to put that into the prospectus. But certainly after the first day of trade, we would look to pick up the phone and start calling around to some of these potential targets. We're always on the lookout for new ideas in the critical metal space, particularly in the antimony, beryllium, copper, cobalt, and cesium space. And Africa, which is our target right now, has a lot of opportunities in those minerals.
Oh, that's excellent. It sounds like you've got some good organization and strategy in place to move the company forward. Is there anything else that you'd like the public to know about?
Well, so first day of trade will be next week. It is our goals and internal targets to do an M&A transaction fairly soon afterwards. We don't have a firm timeline, but it's not a situation where we've raised the money and now have to go look for targets. We actually have various sectors, again, antimony, beryllium, copper, cobalt, cesium, vanadium, tungsten, tantalum, titanium, and even rare earths. So we have a narrow focus and a funnel of potential M&A transactions. So what we'll do then is we will get our mine engineers and our geologists that are based down in Southern Africa to start doing due diligence on some of these potential transactions, really starting next week, once we get the green light from the potential acquiree.
And so how much cash do you have to start things off with?
So we raised £800,000. There was a seed round before, so we had some capital in the treasury before. Again, we're going to look at some of the warrant exercisings. We're going to look at if the potential target is cash flowing. We'll look at maybe a little bit of debt finance. There is capital available in Southern Africa from IDC and some of these other government organizations. They want jobs. They want to see economic growth in their area. And so we will be able to provide some of that in Southern Africa.
And so I guess your first piece of news that will be coming out after you've closed the listing will be eventually a M&A transaction, is what investors can probably expect in the future.
Well, we're going to add to the board. So, depending on where we think the M&A may transact is where we'll add board members. We'd like board members that are experienced both in the UK financial industry, but also too in the metals and mining industry in Africa. So we're looking for a specific type of skill set. We'd like to add some non-executive directors to the board. We might be able to announce processing agreements, because you need to actually have a processing plant in order to handle some of these materials. We might be able to announce, an M&A transaction here in the near future. So there'll be a series of transaction announcements or a board edition corporate announcements here in the very near term.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Russell, for joining us. And we look forward to the future growth of Critical Metals and having you on again to discuss how things are moving forward.
Thank you very much for having me, Bonnie.
And thank you for joining us on Share Talk. Have a very profitable day.
Thank you for listening. Remember to visit our website for more news and other podcasts at www.share-talk.com.